All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Fallen Bets Hackathon podcast. I'm here with Team Echo, Lifeline Journal, and very honored to have this team since they put a lot of heavy AI and deep work into this project. So excited to dive in and explore this project. So it would be great if we could do like a round robin introduction of each other and go over your military background and how you got into tech. So, Hill, you want to take this one?
Yeah, absolutely, Jamil. So I just did 4 years in the Marine Corps, and as I was transitioning out, I attended a coding boot camp, which is like the DoD Skill Bridge program, and I worked with you as my mentor, and I came across the hackathon, which was a great time. We were able to put together a full stack app to better veterans' mental health.
Sweet. Chris Stewart, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, yeah, my name is Chris Stewart. I'm a veteran of 10 years, active Army. And I did medical laboratory technician work for 5 years. And then I did public affairs work for the last five. And in my transition out of service, I did something similar to Suhail. I did a boot camp with Galvanize, so it's in web development. So that was about 4 months, and that's I finished that in June of this year, and then that was actually the day that I graduated was like our first day doing the hackathon.
Oh, cool. So, I don't think you answered. How did you get into tech?
Oh yeah, sorry. Well, that was it. I mean, the the
Or what inspired you to get into tech, rather?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've always had an interest to kind of, make a few tiny apps and just didn't really know where to get started. I tried like some other apps that you can learn to code on, and those didn't really, I mean, there's no structure or anything in those really. Not something that keeps you accountable as the weeks go by. And so, when I was transitioning out of the Army, there's the DoD Skill Bridge program. So that's really what got me in. Yeah, that was really where the the opportunity to apply the interest was through that program.
Right on. Brandon, do you want to go next? I know you have a
Sure.
pretty rich background here.
Yeah. So I joined the Air Force right after 9/11, and I had just come home from Japan. And it was a big thing for me. And it's kind of topical at the moment because this is what's happening in the world right now as well. And after I got out of the military, I joined a Zen Buddhist monastery and like began meditation and stuff like that, and got myself back into a place to where I could function in society again because I really had to find myself. And it's really hard when the world goes through times when shit hits the fan, you know? And I wanted to find ways to help other people go through the things that I've gone through myself. And I think that each one of us has probably had issues to deal with, right? And yeah, after I left the Zen Buddhist monasteries, I taught myself to program in the back of like an 8x10 trailer, traveling around the country selling soap and dog beds and stuff like that at shows, and eventually became a technologist, like a coder and whatnot. And I was lucky enough to find Act Now Education on LinkedIn, which brought me to you guys, Fall In. And at Fall In, it was just an opportunity, right? It was something that was out there through the community that I had connected with that was something I could choose to engage in. And I'm really, really thankful that I took that opportunity, because I was in a bad spot when the hackathon came up, and I didn't know if we were going to do great or not, but it seemed fun, and you guys put on a really awesome thing, and I enjoyed my time doing it. But anyway, yeah, that's just a little story of my background and how I came to know Fallen.
Awesome. Chris, you want to go next?
I was in the Marine Corps for 8.5 years. I did kind of raw. So I did technology/logistics as a MAGTF planner there in the Marine Corps. I did it mostly so I could go to Fort College afterwards back in the day. So after Marine Corps, I went back to the university, got a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, found my way into different kind of IT jobs and kind of where I'm at now. And a lot of my job nowadays doesn't do too much coding. And I was kind of like Brandon, I was looking into my network of different stuff going on and ways to kind of help out. And I saw the Fallen event for Independence Day, and so I decided, hey, I love giving back, and I miss coding, and I miss kind of being with my people. So that's it.
Cool. You didn't want to re-enlist back in the Marine Corps, do a B-billet?
No. I tried to get out 3 times, and I kept getting reactivated. So I said, nope, I'll go back to college, do my own thing.
Okay. Yeah, so hell, you didn't re-enlist either, right? You could have gone drill instructor route.
I did not, Jamil. I had a couple friends that did that. It's pretty motivating.
So I want to bring it back to Brandon. What sparked the idea for Lifeline Project? Or Lifeline Journal, rather.
Yeah, so you put on a hackathon for veterans mental health, and I was going through my own voyage with overcoming suicidal ideation, and that was like something that was topical, right? So the mental health aspect of what you were doing and the journey that I was going through at that moment, they lined up. And me being in technology, every single thing that I've done, whether it was I built a bionic eye, or I led a team that built a bionic eye, and like we did a team that hacked electric motorcycles and everything. It was always around things that were engaging for me. And the Fallen Hackathon happened at the same time as I'm working through my issues with that. And so I thought, well, hey, I've got this thing that I'm doing. I wrote my own app to sort of help myself with it. How could we maybe take this to the hackathon and make something that can actually help other people out of it in accordance with the rules that were set forth? And so I pitched it to the team, and everybody kind of liked the idea. And we ended up trying to take the things that I had already built for myself to get me through my own journey to like another level of adding the new technology that's out there today into it. And I didn't really know how to do it. I don't think any of us had an idea of how we were going to do it. I remember thinking several times through the hackathon, what are we going to do? Because Suhail, like, he was in the middle of going through his coding boot camp at the time, and Chris was like on transition out, right? You were like in progress, and so I didn't know how we were going to do it, but we ended up finding all of our strengths as a team and putting it all together, and just finding a way to utilize AI to actually solve a really big problem.
Cool. So, and this is for everyone, whoever wants to take in, maybe all you guys maybe can take a part in answering, but what was at a high level, the idea of the project, and how is it potentially useful to a veteran, if you can paint that picture?
I think I think Brandon could answer that. I mean, I think all of us could, but I mean, really though, because I mean that really it really proliferated from Brandon's idea, even kind of before he was stuff that he was working on before the stuff that he was working on before the hackathon, and then damn the hackathon with the whole idea of veterans' mental health, it just clicked so well. So, Brandon.
Yeah. So I think the way that this can help other people, it's got so many different ways that it can help other people. So we built. I like the fact that you called it emotional. What was the other thing that you guys called it? Emotional tracker AI or something like that, as well as the Lifeline Journal. Because the hackathon thing that we built was an implementation that was based off of my experience. But the thing that you pitched it as, Jamil, with it, which is emotional tracking AI, is a really interesting thing because this can be applied to veterans all around the world, right? Or all throughout their journey. It can help in detecting their emotional state when they're writing journal entries at the VA, or when they are even engaging in social media and things like that. It could be utilized as something greater than what we were thinking about it being utilized as in the hackathon. If it were, say, an open source thing or a licensable thing that other companies could integrate into their own technology, right? So if it was, instead of the Lifeline Journal that we built, if it was the emotional tracker AI, like this core fundamental thing that could be plugged into other stuff, then it could be utilized anywhere in the mental health space that detecting suicidal ideation and mental health emotional tracking could be useful. Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I just wanted to. I think we I don't think we yet have described really what Lifeline Journal is yet. Am I right? Like what overall, like the idea of like what that was. So I
Yep.
think just to summarize what that is, what quickly, we built a functioning application, like a web application that is a journal entry that is to be used for in conjunction with the VA, and it essentially has like two main features. The first is to integrate AI recognition of what the journal entry says. So it basically like it would detect any suicidal ideation within the journal entry. And then the second piece of that would then be to send, assuming that the user would agree to share their information with the VA, then that application would just send notifications over to um, the VA, the healthcare team that the patient is working with, and then it would also presumptively notify emergency services.
Correct.
So, and like Brandon is saying, I mean, of course, like this can be used outside of the VA. It can be used outside of veterans in general. But at the time when we were doing the hackathon, that is what we had focused on: is building an application that a patient would use to provide journal entries, and once it's submitted, then the AI would analyze it.
Yeah, tools like this would be really useful for patients that are going through IOP or various other mental health tracks with the VA.
What's IOP?
IOP is intensive outpatient, I think.
Gotcha.
Basically, it's like therapy where it's a group thing where people talk to each other, and you can have like assignments and different things that you have to do that are related to your therapy sessions. And some of that can be journaling, and that comes along with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And when you tie what we had built and the research that Suhail and Chris did into the VA's mental health track, it's something that can be really useful and just like a super boost for the technology that's available today. Chris?
I was going to just kind of add in the fact that it wasn't just even getting the AI part to actually kind of work with everything. It was also, there was a big intensive part of it where we're trying to make sure we were being as secure as possible and be as much on the actual device or wherever it is, so that we were taking, you specifically kind of mentored that way in, but the idea that making sure we try to keep it as secure and as sleek as possible, so that when that does come, or start working our way into that idea of being able to make sure it's secure for veterans, or if it's a farther outreached idea, that those elements are already in place. It's not a grandiose idea of an AI does something special for us. No, there are other elements that was put into it, to that all of the team had different elements to work on for it. So
Absolutely.
So, what were each of your contributions? And I'll start with Sohail. I mean, you're like starting this coding boot camp or in the middle of it, jumping into this like team that's tinkering with AI. How did you feel about that? And what was your contribution?
Yeah, certainly, Jamil. Although I couldn't do a hefty amount towards, say, the actual front end or back end, I was able to look into ChatGPT and get some journal entries and mess around with it and find out maybe if we could get it to trigger that suicidal ideation alert. So that was the majority of my time spent on that. But we were able to get past the initial hurdle of ChatGPT refusing to respond to that, and that was very helpful. So we were able to get a definitive yes or no towards like a whether something was likely to be suicidal ideation.
I think something that you also added, Suhail, which was really, really awesome, was the like this big data dump of potential journal entries that someone could be writing, right? As they were going through their therapies, you imagined yourself as someone who was in one of these therapy sessions, and you created lorem ipsum, so to speak, journal entries for different emotional states. And Chris and I were doing like research on papers that were written, that people had done studies on classifying different mental health tracks or different mental health states. And like we gave that stuff to you to kind of like create this other stuff. And as we were integrating the the prompts and the way that our code was talking with the AI, your input from that was really, really helpful, because we wouldn't have been able to think about and figure out how are we going to write this stuff at the same time as like building up all of this data and research on how, like, what somebody would actually be saying, you know?
Oh, thank you, Brendan.
So Sohail, like coming off the heels of this hackathon, how do you envision yourself potentially putting in effort for a future hackathon? What do you see yourself doing differently since you've done one so far?
Yeah, certainly, Jamil. Coming in to the first one, I didn't have very much technical experience, but the guys, they were able to introduce me to React, and I got some more experience with that on the boot camp as I finished up the boot camp, and I feel like I could definitely step in and offer some help now as a result of absolutely the hackathon, pushing me in diving into the cold water. But
Sweet. Yeah, Chris Anderson, do you want to talk about your contributions, and we can go round robin again?
Sure. I was the old man of the group, so I had the research requirements. So I went and did a bunch of research. Had to take Brandon to hand me by the hand to kind of look through, figuring out how to figure out to get Chat GPT to kind of work, and kind of helped out with that part of the project, and just kind of be the old person in the corner, like going, that'd be good for presentations, and let's make sure this wording goes right, and this is how we should, just kind of giving an overall idea with some of the things that, just kind of a UI kind of perspective of this is how this should be asked. So I was the old man of the group, so I just kind of helped out with those things, since I was like, I like programming, but I'm not as up to beat as Stuart is and all that stuff. So I left that to them, and I just helped out in my part.
I'd like to add to that and say that Chris was also very knowledgeable about the VA stuff, so it helped kind of bridge that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of know the way the VA kind of works internally and on different aspects, so I helped out where I could.
Chris, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I think so. Brandon and I, in part, kind of tag team the project management, and then I had as far as like the development was, I did tag team the front end with what's his name, Joshua. Wish he was here. Where is he? But yeah, Joshua. So Joshua made most of the front end. I more or less I don't think he was too familiar with the way that I set up React. I just set up the program, or I set up the environment, the development environment, the project in GitHub, and then consolidated like all the information that we were all gathering into just some documents so that we were all kind of in line. And then so
You're really
front end
humble,
and project
dude.
management, huh?
I said you're really humble. You pushed the whole thing along. I mean, Josh did a lot of the heavy lifting with like the coding stuff, but like you got everything lifted up and set up and structured so that like while you were like packing all your shit and getting ready, he could then take the ball and like do some real hardcore coding, and then you would come back in. Like it was perfect the way you would shift gears from your regular life in the hackathon, or back into the hackathon, because you could come in and do the project management stuff, and then we could go in and do like hardcore coding, and then you came in and did like coding and setup stuff, and then went back to your regular life, and then we got back into doing stuff. It was really cool. I was impressed with the handoffs that you had.
Thank you. That's very
And I
kind.
agree on that.
Kind of forgot that I was also packing my entire house, leaving the army in like 3 or 4 days, and it just left the yeah. Well, I don't remember. I mean, I do remember the leaving the boot camp the same day that we started the hackathon. But yeah, lots of moving pieces. So I mean, time's a ticking. We got no time, and we got 10 projects, and we just got to figure it out. So you know, so
Mm,
if not you, then who? Right? Someone's got to.
that's
So
right.
anyway, yeah. And then I think Brandon
Cool.
is the last one that hasn't gone yet.
Yeah. So I just kind of came in like thinking, well, I know a lot of code, and I built a lot of things. This will be cool. I've led a bunch of teams, and stood back and took a look at who we had, and assessed everybody's abilities, and was like, I got an idea. And we sort of voted on everybody's idea. I think there were like two or three ideas initially that we voted on. And then when we went with my idea, I took leadership of it, and sort of took that initial assessment, assigned roles to the people based off of their stuff, and asked them if they thought it would line up with them. And And when people agreed with that, they took the ball in their court and ran with their responsibilities. And that was something that was actually a breath of fresh air for me from working in the civilian sector of like everybody like debating things all the time, and then actually being able to engage with veterans and work with people who knew how to get shit done. Quite frankly, it was like a massive weight lifted off my shoulders. It took this massive amount of stress that normally comes with getting technological idea running and made it way, way easier. And yeah, anyway, that's I digress. Yeah. And that's kind of what I did. I just, directed people, came up with ideas, and I think probably one of my favorite parts was working with Chris on figuring out how we were going to get the ChatGPT API to actually respond to our prompts correctly, and like whittling down how we were engaging with it and the information that we were going to create for our what do you call it, a backlog of tokens, basically the information that's stored for the AI to remember its short-term memory basically. And yeah, it was a ton of fun. I think at one point, because I'm super familiar with JavaScript and Chris is super familiar with Java, we just decided, hey, you know what? It's like 12 at night. We're both really tired. What if we asked ChatGPT how to write this function? And we did. So we asked ChatGPT how to write an algorithm we described to it, and then took it and then modified it slightly for the information that we actually wanted to put into it. And we're like, holy crap, not only are we using AI to detect the things that we intended for it to detect, right, for our goal, but we're also using it to write the solution that we're thinking up at the same time, which was kind of fun. It wasn't perfect, but it was a really fast way for kind of both of us being old guys to get something done really quickly and also think about it properly before doing it.
So, how did you train the AI model to interpret and understand the entries in the journal?
I think Chris would be pretty good to answer that one.
I think we took a lot of the original research paper that I kind of found online, kind of figured out exactly how they were querying ChatGPT to kind of come up with the solutions, which was a couple thousand Reddit posts and stuff like that it was using. We kind of took how they put input and output it, and we adjusted it to kind of ask it a question in regards to making sure that we get an output we really wanted, which really was, we kind of assembled it down into 5 different answers. And we just kind of figured out we had to kind of simplify it into what we don't want a big long expression of exactly all these things that it got from the journal entry. We want to give it a 1-word answer. Is this depression? Is this suicidal? Is this someone having a good day? Is this someone having someone's, I forget what the 5th one was now. But we try to narrow it down to just being in 1 word, and then we just kind of use what Suhail did and kind of use some of his examples that we had, and we started putting those into kind of just trying to teach that algorithm exactly what we want the output to be, and then exactly how to kind of categorize into those things, and taking what we kind of learned from the previous part. Is that about right?
Yeah.
It was late at night, so
yeah, it was late, and I think during part of it, I was like going to Costco to get a fan because we were going through a heat wave.
That's right.
And so like, I was like, okay, I've got to go. I'll be back in 45 minutes. Here's like what we've come up with. You got to run with it while I'm going. And then I'm texting you while I'm in Costco, trying to assist as best as I could until I got back. And yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. So, is there a particular feature that you guys are most proud of within the whole system?
I think the coolest feature for me was when Josh was able to get the instant call happening, right? So once Chris Henderson and I got the AI to properly give back the various emotional states when a proper suicidal ideation input from Suhail was given, the AI would be able to send a message through Stewart's setup in the repo or the code base to actually bring up an instant phone call in the web app for the veteran. And we made it so that you could not only have it instantly call, but you could also opt in, right? So it could just make the phone call for you, or it could bring up a dialog box that had a button for you to press as soon as it was detected. The other thing that could happen in that process is an email could be triggered as the output of the function that was detecting this to let the mental health team know, hey, here's a veteran in crisis right now. You guys should review this stuff and like get on it. And the furtherance of that was that this idea of tracking the various mental health states could also become something that would be delivered to the mental health providers teams in progress as the veteran was interacting with this. And that was something that Henderson was like extremely helpful with, having that knowledge inside the VA as to like what's going to happen and what various channels could this go through. And then for myself as well, the channels that I was going through in the VA, along with everybody else's experience in the tech and the processes that they were going through.
Nice. I want to dive into the challenges that each of you guys have faced during the hackathon, and I want to start with Sohail, since it seems like you were the most sort of junior in this team. Could you talk about some of your challenges when you first joined the team?
Yeah, absolutely, Jamil. I believe Brandon brought up databases, relational databases, and how this was related to that, and it just all just went right over my head. I think Chris went over Vite with me, how to bootstrap React, and I think a bunch of the technical stuff was definitely something different for me, being it was probably been like the first week or two of the boot camp. I'm really happy that I was able to look through that because it got me a head start and pushed me further through the boot camp than I was currently at.
Sweet. Chris, you want to go next? Stuart.
Yeah. So, I mean, okay. So just imagine you've got, like you're already in a boot camp for 4 months, like you're about to finish this thing, and then a friend tells you, or someone like a peer in your cohort tells you, hey, there's this hackathon that's going on. It's the end of like next week. It's like actually like when we graduate. I'm gonna do it. You should do it too. And I'm like, okay, first of all, what is a hackathon? And so I had no clue at all, what I didn't know that this was part of like the tech sphere at all. I had no concept that this was a thing. And so this was my first introduction to it. And, but, we've been like, at least like in the cohort that I was involved in, like it's all kind of like small team and small amount of time type projects that you're working on. So I felt more in my element when we were kind of, because the hackathon is like 48-hour window of like straight, like from ideation of a application to coming up with some version of some working version. They're just giving you one, most or minimum viable product with one feature that works. And so from getting a project from literally nothing to the MVP just requires a lot of people skills, like this, like trying to get all these ideas, kind of like in the same kind of stratosphere, right? So that was something that I love, to be frank, but it certainly has its challenges. So like I don't know, like that was it. Like the time, like how much time that we had, which was literally
Mm-hmm.
like 48 hours or less, and then just like getting it off the ground. That was the big thing. So it's really about like yeah, I don't know. All of that was exciting, but that I think that was like the big challenge for me, was like, how are we going to make this happen? But we did. So here we are.
Yeah. I think also it was super, super cool to see that, like, there were several times you and I were like, are we even going to get a project done? Right? Are we going to be able to deliver anything? And like, it wasn't until the very last bit that we actually closed everything up and buttoned everything down so we got a final product to show. And like, I think it was the last couple of hours where I was putting a presentation together, and like we were in this that's right, we were in this virtual world thing, like this metaverse thing, and it was my first time in the metaverse. And like, so I had this little character standing up there doing a presentation and like practicing it in this room for a couple of hours at the very last minute. And it was a blast, man. It was a blast.
Yeah, to add
Awesome,
my
man.
2 cents to exactly what Brandon was saying, that was probably one of my biggest scares during all the whole event. Was I'm not I'm the old man of the group, so the fact that it was like trying to get everything put together. And I remember like sitting on the initial couple calls we began the 48 hours. It was like, oh, we've got a lot of ideas kind of going into this one. We got to kind of figure out what we want as the closing up. And I remember the morning of the presentation, there was a couple times the bill wasn't quite working out right, and we were sitting there going, we got to get this fixed. We got to get the presentation working. We're all going to figure out everybody else is everybody logging in to make sure it's all working. And I think that was one of my biggest fears, is like, am I going to be able to help out in a lot of this process? Am I going to be able to keep up with everybody going on? Because I would also listen to Chris over there and their conversations about trying to figure out how to get the database and all that to work at the beginning of the whole thing, to just trying to participate and help out wherever I could. So yeah.
Yeah, kind of shifting away from the project a little bit and into the program of the hackathon, where we had workshops and speakers. I'd love to hear more about your guys' experience with that. What you like, if you guys had any anecdotes with any of the speakers, if anyone stuck out more than the rest, or if you guys had anything to share related to yeah, the speakers or workshops.
I know we kind of used some of the speakers and some of the sections, like on there was a section on mental health and the providers that help out and making sure they kind of keep at the center of the idea, and we kind of included that into the project. We used kind of a lot of the speaker parts to make sure those kind of tent poles for the whole project itself. So, and I specifically remember the section with the making sure the mental health providers are always integrated. It's not the program goes off in its own little venture and does its own thing. Keep them involved. So that's what I remember.
Yeah, Brandon, what did you think of Ted Benson, our AI workshop that we did? Since you're super talented in that space, curious to know if you even attended it, or if you did, how you
Which
felt about it.
one? Which one was Ted?
Ted Benson, he's the founder of Steamship. He came in and did a workshop on how to build your own
Oh
sort of.
yeah, that's right. I was actually taking notes during his presentation because he gave a ton of really great information around the things that we could actually utilize. And so I took the chunks that I could imagine being useful for the idea that I was planning on pitching already to the team when I was listening to that. And I thought it was also interesting with the other people that were speaking as well, because each one of the people brought something to the table. You had some speakers that were clearly going through something while they were speaking, and it was very enlightening for us to watch and witness and be able to be there during a mental health hackathon for that individual while they were going through it and support them and like identify with them at the same time as taking a break from the coding that we were doing, and then integrate that into how we were building our stuff. And then there were other speakers as well that were in there that were really awesome. But I think Ted's stuff was really good because it got me personally thinking about the tools that were available for developers to utilize when they were building any kind of an AI project. And it sort of just got my gears turning as to how can we approach what we're doing? How can we achieve our goals for this hackathon, right? How can we win it? Was what I was thinking about.
Jamil, can you remind me again the speakers? Because that was, I mean, now it's about a few months ago. So, like, that was probably for me, that was like the most interesting or the most memorable one for me because of the uh, information in his speech. But I don't recall all of them off the top of my head.
Yeah, so we had Michael Pett from Uber that came in on the third day. Obviously, our keynote fireside chat with Jake Wood, who's the founder of Groundswell and formerly at Team Rubicon. We had a social media influencer, Shane McCree, come in and talk about resilience. We had Chris Brown from the mental health side of things have a chat with Adriana. Yeah,
What was the speech, or what was discussed with Chris Brown? Because I don't recall that one.
yeah, it was mostly diving into the subject of mental health since he's a mental health counselor. He's a Marine Corps veteran, and now he's a therapist at the VA. And
Oh,
so,
that's right. Yeah.
Oh, that one.
yeah, it
Yeah,
was right before Jake Wood came in. So,
he
yeah,
brought up really good concerns. Yeah, I remember that. His primary concern was that the healthcare system, not to take away from the human aspect of the care by using AI in general, and that was a concern that we had before he came up, and that was something that we addressed as well within, like, when we talked about our ideas and what we decided on moving forward, was that we would build something that wouldn't necessarily feel like it's taking over a human's job of, I mean, or not necessarily human's job, but a like it wouldn't take away from the human interaction of a, you know, uh, provider, licensed provider, and the patient. It would just be a tool that would supplement the care that the patient's getting, which
I
is,
think
I
to
think,
add,
a really
oh,
clear
go ahead.
distinction. Yeah, that's all. It was just a very clear distinction between the two.
That was one of the big things that you pushed, Stuart, while we were building it, was to maintain that human interactive feel, right? We don't want to make this like super techie, because if we do, then some vets are going to be pushed back by it, because there are some people who are like, oh, I don't want AI, like I don't want Big Brother looking at my thing, right? They get all off on one track, and we didn't want to go too far onto the opposite rails of being super tech integrated. And the other thing that you pushed, Stuart, was making sure that we weren't too intrusive, right? We had to, Henderson and I talked a lot about some of the ideas you brought up around people who wouldn't want their information to be sent out to either a third party AI source or even their mental health care provider. So we had to think up ways as to how our system could be integrated so that it could be run on a cell phone, right? For the hackathon, we didn't get that portion done. But after the hackathon, I did some research with Llama 2 instead of ChatGPT, and that can actually be run in like a Linux terminal on the phone itself, so that everything can be done on the device for a secure setup, so to speak. And anyway, I digress. The idea was to make it not too intrusive and also still feel human, and that was a really big thing that you pushed on the table, I thought.
Yeah, I think like it's just, I mean, someone mentioned this earlier. I can't remember when, but the idea is just like, just because you can make something doesn't mean you should make it, right? I mean, like if you're gonna make something that's useful, and like we know, we're dealing with veterans, we're dealing with people who don't like oversight, right? And that's just about I mean, that's anybody. Nobody really wants to have like their personal information out in the cloud or out in the web or wherever it is, like where you don't know where it is. So, if there's, it's just all of these are just like, I guess this is kind of answering like one of the other questions that you had about what are the hurdles that we overcame in the process of making this, was nailing down the focus of what we were producing, because it it felt much better collectively knowing that, or at least believing, like everyone in the group seemed to believe that this is something that truly could be useful, instead of making something, well, I mean, like we're just building it just because we're just trying to see if we can integrate ChatGPT into this kind of like prompting system, journaling system. Like, no, like, I mean, we're building something that, I mean, has potential to truly be used in the healthcare system. So yeah, yeah.
Chris or Sohail, do you guys have anything to add with any of the other speakers? I know when I did the post event survey, a lot of folks said good things about the Uber's Michael Pett's talk, and so yeah, if you guys have anything to add, speaker wise.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that you brought Shane on there. He really did highlight a lot of the hurdles of some transitioning service members. So I think that did align with what our app was wants to accomplish. So
And I agree. I was thinking about the Uber converse, the gentleman from Uber, and all that stuff, and that transitional part, and just kind of that different perspective from a normal of a service member transitioning out and trying to get into that part of life, and kind of things he's gone through, and just the kind of the roles of being kind of a tech company and all that. It kind of felt kind of personal in some way. Maybe my mind was a little bit maybe into our project at the time. So, but yeah.
So thinking ahead in terms of like your plans with the project, are you guys looking at potential collaboration from other sources or potential partners? How are you guys seeing this move forward?
Yeah, so I'll pick up the ball on this one. The initial place where we are right now, I've actually been accepted into a founders program that can help teach us about how to get a startup going, right? And open the door for meeting people that could be leveraged or beneficial to us or mentoring us and getting this off the ground. At the same time as reaching out to some people that have input into some of the people who are really valuable or really connected for doing this. And they've said that we need to get doctors on board with a prototype of our app that can be tested, right? If we get expert approval or just expert feedback, really, it's not even approval, then it can move us to the next stage of potentially getting investment. And that's something that I'd really like to see being done. And Henderson and I have talked a couple of times about how to engage with the VA potentially on this and what the right channels would be. And I've also talked to my own psychiatrists and therapists and doctors about this sort of thing to find the right avenues of getting experts to actually give feedback that aren't going to be a conflict of interest with me or anybody on the team, right? And that's sort of the things that I have looked at in getting this to the next stage of continuation.
Sweet, good luck. Have you guys explored similar products? Like I know Pi is kind of making headlines. Not sure if you guys heard of that app. There's character.ai, which I remember talking to you about this, Brandon. There's some other similar ones as well. But yeah, have you guys had an experience with similar products and noticed any like major differentiators?
Yeah, so I've got some experience with character.ai and a couple of the other different AI platforms. I've actually so I mentioned earlier that I studied at a Zen Buddhist monastery and I'm going through like some pretty extensive training with that stuff. I actually trained an AI on building like a Zen Roshi and stuff like that, or a Zen monk. And it's really interesting how you can utilize the platforms that are out there to build like a chat bot or something like that that can do this. But the thing that was really cool from the hackathon that we did was we didn't just build something that would chat with someone. We built a piece of core functionality for any kind of code base that could be a tool and it could be plugged in, right? So detecting what mental health state someone was in a way that could be used in code is way different than training a chatbot that can just go back and forth with you and potentially be a therapist, maybe saying good things or maybe not being saying good things. And that was one of the things that Stuart brought up, that we should probably not try to tackle in the 2 or 3 day hackathon that we had, because it's a really dangerous thing and you get on the verge of breaking that human connection sort of a thing there. And if it goes wrong, I think Henderson had brought up how dangerous that could be, and it's something that I had also experienced with my background in the bionic eye stuff, with working with the FDA and the regulations that are around those things. It's a really, really fine line. So we managed to avoid that entirely by building something that gave just a chunk of answers, a, like an array out that could be utilized in any kind of application at all. And then we built an app around it.
Awesome. Yeah, as we're kind of wrapping things up here, how can communities support the mission and growth? Is it adding more stars on GitHub? Is it, or yeah, you guys tell me.
I mean, you can just throwing ideas out there. The way that, I mean, the only reason we're talking to you right now is because you created Fallen and you had an opportunity for us to have a hackathon. So, I mean, hackathons only give us 2 days, 3 days, I guess, of trying to work on this. So, I mean, personally, I think I would like to see some more hackathons. Maybe in the sense of like episodes, not, I don't know, like just like stages. So like this was, this can be the first of 4 hackathons that, we work on the same projects, and we try to like develop it further and further and further, and then we move on to like a different topic. If we, I don't know, if I know that it requires resources to make these things happen. I'm not taking away from that, but man, it was a good experience to continue to work within a team. So the opportunity to do that is really the foundation of how, like, getting this off the ground. So mm, that's what I would like to see, if we, if that's something that's
Hmm.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I think building on what you're saying, Stuart, it would be really awesome if anybody could reach out to Jamil or anybody else that they know, like the contact information for on this podcast. If you wanted to help support us either through working with us or through potentially like seed funding or something like that, as well as pairing with a little bit of mentorship as to how to move forward with it, I think that would be a really big benefit, because for getting everybody's engagement and actual time, you know, it does take something that is going to help us push through things, whether it's like getting pizzas or Red Bulls or, I don't know, paying the gas or whatever. Any little thing that can help with it is going to be an additional motivator for our team to continue building these things. And the more motivation that we get, the harder we can push on it, and the more we can show to the people who are looking to see things from us so that they can put real money into it, right? As I was saying earlier in the podcast, we have people who are out there that actually want to see like a production version that the doctors have actually been able to give to patients to test, and we just got to get to that point. And right now we've got, something that works fairly well, but it's not something that I think any of us really would feel comfortable putting in the hands of somebody who was where I was just a couple of months before the hackathon actually started, right? Because I don't even know how I put together the little app that I built so that I could be journaling during my CBT sessions and whatnot. Uh, and, and so to have something that works as well as that, plus having the integration of the AI into it, is really our first step to getting to a true round of investment. And I think we could use some help with that.
Cool. I wanted to dive back into the project sort of workflow. Can you talk to me about the dynamics? Did you guys use sprints? Maybe Chris, you can take this one.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So certainly we did. I think we would do things the same way if we were in another like hackathon or like time centric, you know, situation. Really, I mean, I can't really stress enough, like, time was of the essence. So we couldn't really, we had to help, we just had to get on focus. So we started with discussing, generating the ideas for the project, voting on essentially what we were going to move forward with, and then we kind of gave some direction to all the team members. We would come back at a certain time, and then we would start to piece, provide input on where we're at and that kind of thing. So the first thing to do was, I mean, get on GitHub, create the project, create the Jira board, wherever you want to call it, the Canva board. What's it called? Yeah,
Kanban.
Kanban board. Thanks. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then the words, right? So, and then just getting the IDE set up so that everybody was on the same page, so that they can provide some uh, uh, everybody at least had the ability to provide input. So yeah, we kind of like did shift work too. Like I took a
Mhm.
nap while Henderson and Brandon were working on something, and then same with Josh. To be frank, I mean, what we used the strengths that everybody kind of shared that they had. Since we didn't know each other very well, we just kind of briefly talked about who we are, and this is what I'm comfortable with, and this is what I'm familiar with. This is what I know. This is where my knowledge is, and then we took that and ran with it. So Josh, like I said, like really was the one who made the meat of that front end
Mm.
presentable. So, I mean, if it wasn't for Josh, I know that he's not here right now. I wish he was, but if it wasn't for Josh's effort, we wouldn't have a working project to show at the end of the hackathon. So, yeah, I mean, once we identified those assets that everybody had, then we just move forward making a plan there.
It was actually really cool during the presentation thing because I think the way that it was set up, I was on one screen and either Henderson or I had some of the PDFs of the research that we were doing on another screen that was in the metaverse thing. And then Josh was actually running the code on a third screen that was in display there. So were there three different screens on this giant metaverse stage that we were presenting on, and three different people controlling different things and like having to keep track of the time that we were spending on each one of the sections. I had Henderson in my ear saying how much time was left as I was talking to make sure that I could spit out everything quick enough, because unlike the podcast where I'm speaking slowly and like also working through everything that's happening in the world right now, I was like, I got to get this done in this little teeny tiny amount of space and get everything out and also make it comprehensible to the people who are listening, and be listening to someone telling me that the time is going on while I'm doing it. And then Henderson realized that he had to like make grunts or something like that because he couldn't say the time because the feedback was coming through while I was doing the presentation. And I didn't realize that, but he did. And somehow we had to like sync up with how he was giving me the cues as I was presenting. And it just worked out. Yeah. Yeah. That was a blast.
That's
Okay.
incredible. Henderson, did you have anything to add to the sprints side of
Oh,
things?
I was kind of trying to add into what Chris was saying earlier about the other ideas that could happen of kind of doing extra sprints or events to kind of further projects down the road was my original kind of comment towards that. My thought toward that idea was maybe it could be other events. I mean, it's more organization, that kind of thing. But also, as we kind of talked about during the event itself, it was a lot of constant constant trying to figure out where we were all at and trying to figure out where our next effort was. And for everybody in this group, it was a great event.
Awesome. Yeah, as we wrap things up here, so Chris and Sohail, you guys are like fresh out of the military, correct? Like it's been less than a year, if I'm correct.
I
Yeah,
left in July.
absolutely. It's been like 2 weeks.
Yeah, congrats on
That's
your
crazy.
transition, Suhail. Shit.
Do you guys have any or what are you guys most looking forward to? Because I think for veterans who've been out, they could tell you that it does take some time to fully transition, especially after active duty, depending on the intensity of the enlistment. So, yeah, what are you guys most looking forward to? This could be your career, this could be personal. Would love to hear that side of stuff.
I'm definitely looking forward to tech. I'm just looking around. There's just so many opportunities, and it's just candy at a candy store.
Okay, well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking forward to. I mean, I've been pretty happy not waking up at 5:30, going to first formation at 6, and then starting my day off like that. I mean, it's great. It's great, but hey, yeah, I have a lot more time to do the projects that I want to do. So yeah. So I mean, like this is stuff that I'm looking forward to. So just building useful tools that make sense. That like I have the capability now, and I mean, I just it like the coolest thing about this is like it's like this world that you don't really know exists. That's kind of like in like it's accessible, it's available, and even if you wanted to like get involved with it, like I at least now have like a little bit of like real comprehension after my boot camp of like working with the team in a development arena that allows me to like, okay, well, like I know now what needs to happen. So I really enjoy the idea of being on a team that is making something that's useful and relevant. So that's what I'm really excited for.
Awesome. So, hell, you mentioned it's been 2 weeks since you've been out. Do you miss the Marine Corps yet?
Certainly, Jamil, there were certain elements like having just come off the deployment that can certainly be missed, and just being around the people. It's a certain culture that I definitely won't get outside of the military.
Definitely. Henderson or Brandon, do you guys have any words of advice for these two freshly minted veterans?
You want to go first, Henderson?
My advice is just be open and keep learning and open every door you can.
Yeah, mine is very similar. Stuart, the path that you're looking at and the way you described wanting to do good with the work that you're doing, I think has been a driving force for me in my career. Since before I joined the military, that was like a driving force in my education and whatnot. But then it was solidified while I was in the military, and that was something that it can really lead to great leadership to civilians when we are in the tech industry. And there are a lot of great leaders that are also civilians, and it's just something extra that we add as a veteran to be able to bring that drive to any form of organization. And having worked in the civilian field for so long, coming back into it with you guys was like a breath of fresh air for me. And being so fresh from the military, any any company that you work in, and this goes for everybody who's listening as well, any company that you work in, if there are veterans there, you will fill their sails with wind because of the drive that you bring with you. And for civilians, maybe you'll kick their ass into gear a little bit too. Yeah. And the same thing goes for you, Suhail. I think the fact that you completed your boot camp now and you're out, it's just open fields for you, man. I think things are going to be great for you and for anybody around you who you know that may also be transitioning at the moment. Anything that you find, share it with them. And as well as all of the listeners that are out here, just reach out to vets that have transitioned or who are active duty members who are going to be transitioning that you might know, and pass on a little bit of information if you can, because there's not enough of that in the command right now that gets passed down because everybody's got their jobs to do at the same time as everybody who's transitioning out, right? And there are all of these great programs like Act Now, Education, and Fall In, and all of the ones, I don't know if there are any that anybody else remembers, but promoting them will be beneficial to your friends, your family, and your brothers and sisters.
Awesome advice. Any last parting words for the listeners?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do a hackathon.
Thank you for this opportunity, Jamil. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a great honor to have you guys, and it definitely strengthens me to continue to do more and continue to iterate and make these events, bigger and better. So, thank you guys, and appreciate you guys coming on the pod.
Thanks so much. It's good to see you
Thank
guys.
you.
Take care.
Same here.